So in one of them, we had children who were evacuated from Mykolaiv to Western Ukraine. They spent a couple of weeks in the mountain retreat in the Carpathian Mountains to unwind, to get healthier and recover after the traumatic experiences. On the other hand, we sent some humanitarian aid funds to buy some humanitarian aid and necessities to the people in Mykolaiv and also the villages outside of Mykolaiv, close to the front line. Thankfully, the local volunteers who are helping us there, brave people, kind, selfless. So they went there and they sent us some videos and photos. And being here in London, we're suffering from hot weather. Utilities are going up. What is happening in those villages is a complete devastation. So they shot us the picture of houses, and houses are destroyed. Every second one, if not, all of them, one way or another, sustain damages. And some people evacuated. Okay, children were taken away, but the elderly people are still there. They feel they have nowhere to go. One grandma, elderly woman, 86 years old. She's been through the Second World War. She was a child when Mykolaiv, there was a fighting, I think, occupation by the Nazis, by the German Nazis. And she says this is worse than then. What am I to do? My house is destroyed. And they sent us the video where indeed her house that she's been building up throughout her life is in ruins. So she's living with one of her neighbors who so far is lucky. So it's important to keep in mind the big picture, but also to feel for the people what it's like in a daily routine. And part of my family is from Donbass. They say that it's pro-Russian, etc. There are so many cliches that Western media had used before, separatists, etc., etc. But that's not the case. People there are not pro-Russian. Maybe some of them were not particularly politically minded, but they still wanted to have a peaceful, normal life, which was taken away from them, mostly outside of their control. Some of them may have collaborated since 2014, but most of them were thrown into it by Russia. The devastation there is equally bad, if not worse. Cities getting completely razed to the ground. Behind the big things, there's geopolitics. What hurts me as a Ukrainian, there are so many nations out there that are neutral. Developing nations that should be, the ones that former colonies, for example, that don't see this human dimension. They see this as some sort of play of big powers. But we are real people. There are real people living there. This 86-year-old lady, her life is destroyed, and there's no way for her to put it together on her own. And yes, as someone who's been supporting, helping children and humanitarian things, why are we saying arm Ukraine now? Because had Ukraine been armed before properly, we wouldn't have had a need for this humanitarian help, for the evacuation, for the refugees, for the suffering. That's what deterrence is about. But at least give us arms now, so that the suffering that has already been inflicted on us is smaller. Yes, we have, and I'll talk about the nuclear power plant because it's part of the south of Ukraine, which Ukraine wants to liberate. That clearly people, there is, I'm sure, people there. It's a big country. Some of them may be, pro-Russian, harbor, their own. But the majority has shown that they want to be with Ukraine. We want, Ukrainian South to be back with us, the Crimea as well. Now, the way Russia approaches this war is that, there are no limits. There are no rules of, humanity, forget about it, thrown out, does not matter. Rules of war, they don't count. There are no rules whatsoever. There has to be a rule of self-preservation. Nuclear power is the worst, risk that humanity has invented so far. So the fact that they took over a power plant instead of isolating it and letting people operate it in a normal fashion, they put military vehicles, literally munition, explosives on the ground in there, and they're actively using it as a tool of coercion or manipulation, threatening, making those innuendos that or shelling themselves. So we need to send a strong message that there are red lines, beyond the red lines that have already been crossed, and this is one of them. My message is that always remember an individual. Visualize the suffering. It may be lost in the big picture, but it's really individual that is suffering. Life is shattered. A parent is lost. A child is mutilated by a rocket. It has a personal dimension. It's not just general. Secondly, is that we need to keep supporting Ukraine. And yes, we need to support Ukraine, and we need to encourage the powers here to support Ukraine militarily, because this is the most effective way to prevent, the suffering. Unfortunately, yes, the world is what it is. Flower power does not work on all people. That's why you have prisons. That's why you have police. That's why you have the military. And this is the case in Ukraine, where the history is made for Europe and the rest of the world. A lot of powers are watching what's going to happen in Ukraine, and will draw conclusion from that. So Ukraine cannot fall, not just for the sake of the Ukrainian people, but for the sake of Europe, security in Europe, and much wider content, for the sake of the whole world order, really. So these are my messages. Please keep coming. Please keep supporting Ukraine. Please keep those people in your mind. There is a lot of suffering, but there is also a lot of resilience, a lot of hope. Our army is fighting back bravely. We just need to stay on it. We need to keep our support. We need to support those who are in captivity, in Russian captivity, that have already been mentioned. We have a role to